Hello everyone, my name is Sarafi and I'm happy to meet you all. And today we're going to be playing Centur-Ion, Bestial Centur-Ion. I actually started making this deck solely because I wanted to make as close to a pure Bestial deck work in Master Duel as possible. And I did take an existing Bestial Centur-Ion list and I made it even higher in Bestial content. And I'm really satisfied with how this turned out, in my opinion. I've played this deck, I've gotten high rank with it, I'm enjoying the gameplay, I'm enjoying how the deck interacts with the board, how it can interact on both the opponent's turn and your turn going first and going second. I think this deck is a really good balance of control and board building and board breaking. I think it's probably, I would say it's probably the ideal deck for a Synchro player at this point in Duel Links. I know that White Forest exists. I know that there are a few other decks that play a lot of Synchro monsters, but I feel like Centur-Ion offers so many unique features, and it also really gives it has room to grow because there will be additional Centur-Ion cards pulled out later that will be very interesting. So let's cover the deck and see what we can do with it. For the hand traps, we are playing 2 copies of Effect Veiler. Discard this card to target an effect monster and negate its effects till the end of the opponent's turn, only during the main phase. This is a pretty decent card. One thing about Effect Veiler in particular is that it allows you to interact with Tenpai, even if they try and make it so that you can't use effects during the battle phase. So as long as they don't have Sanguine Summoning, which is limited to 1, then they can potentially try and build their board, and as long as you discard Effect Veiler before the battle phase, a card like Chandra will not work. In addition, Effect Veiler, even though it's the same thing as Infinite Impermanence, is a light monster, therefore it can feed your Bestial cards. So I think this card is excellent. A Max C, just to discourage the opponent from playing the game. Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs. This card negates the effect of a card that will try and search through the deck. Importantly, it does not negate the activation of such cards, which means that a card that can only be activated once per turn will still not be able to be activated again. So this card is actually really, really good at preventing people from building boards. I would suggest running 3 of them in basically any Master Duel deck at this point. 1 copy of Nibiru. Nibiru is a great card to draw into when you are under Max C. We are not playing any copies of Molcharmi Fualos in this deck, just not enough room. Good card, though. 2 copies of Called by the Grave. In particular, we really don't want to get disrupted when we go first, so we will run Called by the Grave. We don't really have room for Crossout Designator. I guess if you wanted to cut one of the Bestial cards to make the deck more consistent, you could play Crossout Designator instead, but I wouldn't want to do that. And then lastly, Infinite Impermanence as a one-of to try and give you some additional interactions. It also makes the deck cheaper. You could run a 3rd copy of Effect Veiler in place of Infinite Impermanence, but since you can get 1 copy of Infinite Impermanence from the store, that does make the deck cheaper overall. As far as the main Centur-Ion engine, we have 3 copies of Centur-Ion Primera. This is the only tuner monster in the deck, which does make the deck very odd as a Synchro recommendation, but I'll explain. Centur-Ion Primera is a level 4 spellcaster tuner monster. She is light. While this card is a continuous trap card, level 5 or higher Centur-Ion monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. That is a very decent protection effect. Very nice. You can only use each of the following effects of Centur-Ion Primera once per turn. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 Centur-Ion card from your deck to your hand, except Centur-Ion Primera. Also, you cannot special summon Centur-Ion Primera for the rest of the turn. So the Centur-Ion monsters are interesting in that they can special summon themselves from your spell and trap zone. But if you use their effects, you are locked out of special summoning cards with the same name for the rest of the turn. And that doesn't just affect them being special summoned from the spell and trap zone. In particular, for our deck, it means that you actually can't recycle Centur-Ion Primera the same turn with Bestial Dispotter. So I was really hoping for like a way where I could just, I could Centur-Ion Primera, get my field spell, Synchro, then banish it from the graveyard with my one of my Bestials, then use Dispotter to bring it back side another tuner monster. And unfortunately, it stops itself from being special summoned with the effect of Dispotter, which makes it a lot harder to interact with. This deck is good, but I feel like it'll be much better when the other Bestial Centurion Tuner finally comes to Master Duel. The last effect is during the main phase. If this is a continuous trap, you can special summon this card. It doesn't say it's a quick effect, but it is a quick effect because the card is a trap card, so it's always quick. Centur-Ion Trudea, Dark Pyro Monster, level 4. During your main phase, you can place this card you control and one Centur-Ion monster from your hand or deck except Centur-Ion Trudea in your spell and trap zones as continuous traps. Also, you cannot special summon Centur-Ion Trudea for the rest of the turn. During the main phase, if this card is a continuous trap, you can special summon this card, then increase its level by 4. Okay, now, Trudea is an example of why Centur-Ion in particular is really powerful in the current meta. So, Trudea's effect activates. You take a Centur-Ion monster like Primera from your deck and place it in the spell and trap zone. That does two things for you. Number one, it can't be ashed because you're playing a monster directly from your deck. You can then special summon the monster from your spell and trap zone. So it's essentially the same thing as special summoning from the deck, but it can't be ashed. Very interesting. The other thing is, because the monster is being placed from your spell and trap zone, from your deck into your spell and trap zone, and then special summon from there, it does not trigger the effect of Fualos. So Max C will still hurt you, but Centurions are, in particular, extremely Fualos proof. You normal summon your Trudea, and then Fualos activates, and if you special summon for the deck or the extra deck for the rest of the turn, your opponent draws a card. Trudea effect, set itself, play your Primera from the deck, Primera effect, special summon itself, add your field spell, pitch a card, place the Gargoyle from your deck in your spell and trap zone, Gargoyle special summon itself, then you Synchro and you get your level 12. That's one draw off of Fualos when you essentially summoned 3 monsters. So you can see that being able to special summon from your spell and trap zone after placing it from the spell and trap from your deck into the spell and trap zone is a very cheeky way of getting around this new Max C card. So I definitely recommend that if you have not played Centur-Ion in a while, that you take a look at it as an option, especially if you are furious with Mulch Army cards. Next up, we have one copy of Centur-Ion Gargoyle II. That is, it's not as good as Trudea, so we only need one copy of it. Level 8 Dragon Monster. You can send one face-up Centur-Ion card you control to the graveyard, special summon this card from your hand. Also, you cannot special summon Centur-Ion Gargoyle II for the rest of the turn. If this card is sent to the graveyard as Synchro material, you can add this card to your hand. During the main phase of this card as a continuous trap, you can special summon this card, then you can reduce its level by 4. You can only use each effect once per turn. Okay, so Gargoyle in particular can special summon itself for free, which is a useful ability, but then it also gets the ability to special summon itself from the spell and trap zone as well. So, just getting a level 8 on the board is good. You will almost never adjust Centur-Ion Gargoyle's level like you adjust Trudea's level, because a level 4 monster is not really that useful to you. You have 2 level 4s already, but a level 8 is excellent. So yeah, this card is really good to just get in rotation and then kind of like cycle it in and out with your Synchro monsters. You don't need to run more than one of this. As part of the Centur-Ion package, we are running Bonfire at 2. Bonfire, add 1 level 4 or lower Pyro monster from your deck to your hand, which draws you your Trudea. Perfect. That's a good combo starter. Stand Up Centur-Ion. This is a field spell. You will almost always search this card with your Primera. Cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects while you control a Centur-Ion monster card. Any Centur-Ion. That's really, really good. You can only use each of the following effects of Stand Up Centur-Ion once per turn. During your main phase, if this card was activated this turn, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, place 1 Centur-Ion monster from your deck in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. So you can only do this once per copy of Stand Up Centur-Ion that you have. But really, that effect only needs to resolve 1 time, and then you have all 3 of your monsters in rotation. Because if you drew this card off of Primera, this will place your Trudea, and then Trudea can just get you your 1 copy of Gargoyle. If you just hard drew this, you can use it to get Trudea. Trudea searches Primera. Primera can then draw Gargoyle, and Gargoyle can send Trudea to special summon itself. And then again, you just have all 3 of them in rotation. So even though this effect only resolves the turn that it was activated, it is a great, like, it literally gets all the monsters you need into rotation, and then you just constantly rotate them. So, it doesn't need to happen more than once. Then here becomes the better effect. If a monster is special summoned, you can immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro summon one Synchro monster using monsters you control as material, including at least one Centur-Ion monster. So you do not have to make a Centur-Ion Synchro monster, and you can use non-Centur-Ion monsters as material as long as at least one of them is a Centur-Ion monster, and it triggers off of your opponent's special summoning as well. This card is very, very good. In particular, what makes this card good is it's not a monster effect, and it can chain block. Oh, that is fantastic. So if you special summon your Primera during your opponent's turn, you can use it as a Chain Link 1, get yourself a search, then your opponent can't ash it or negate and destroy your Primera because your second effect is going to be the stand-up Centur-Ion to Synchro summon. Excellent. Now, this is very similar to like TGs being able to quick synchro or Synchrons being able to quick synchro, but the huge difference is, number one, it's not a monster effect, which means it can't be negated. Number two, since it's not a monster activating the effect, and it doesn't target, if your opponent tries to respond to this by destroying one of your cards, as long as you can still synchro summon with your remaining cards, it will still resolve. So, yes, it's really easy to interrupt if you only have one Centur-Ion monster or one tuner monster, but as long as you have a flexible board, which you usually will, then getting rid of one monster in response to this will not stop the effect from resolving, which makes it significantly better than an effect like Formula Synchron, for example. I love this card. Next up, we have Emblema Oath. This is a quick play spell. Activate one of these effects. Place one Centur-Ion monster from your deck in your spell and trap zone as a continuous trap. For the rest of the turn, while you control that card or any card with the same original name, you cannot special summon from the extra deck except for Centur-Ion monsters, or you can set one Centur-Ion spell or trap directly from your deck. You can only activate one Emblema Oath per turn. Okay, so this card is just another combo starter. It'll put your Trudea in the spell and trap zone, and then you just Synchro. It does mean that you are Centur-Ion locked, but that's fine on turn 1, because you can Synchro summon during your opponent's turn, so you don't really need to make anything that's not Centur-Ion on your turn 1. If this is turn 3, it makes it a little bit more difficult, but I mean, this effect is so good that it's better than nothing, really. So I wouldn't worry too much if it stops you from winning the game. Then for the extra deck, we are playing Centur-Ion Legatia. Level 12, Machine Synchro Monster, 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuners. Your monsters with 2,000 or less attack cannot be destroyed by battle. You can only use each of the following effects of Centur-Ion Legatia once per turn. If this card is special summon, you can draw 1 card. Then you can destroy the monster your opponent controls with the highest attack, your choice of tide. And during the end phase, you can place 1 non-synchro Centur-Ion monster from your hand or graveyard in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. This is a good card. It will just allow you to easily interrupt your opponent and destroy their cards. You make this if you're going second, and you make Auxilla if you're going first. Speaking of Auxilla, a Centur-Ion Auxilla, level 12 Dark Dragon Synchro Monster, 3,000 attack, 3,000 defense. Face-up cards in your spell and trap zone cannot be destroyed by card effects. That is gross. This card will protect all of your Centur-Ion monsters, and it will also protect any of your other continuous spells and traps, which Bestials use a lot of. You can only use each of the following effects of Centur-Ion Auxilla once per turn. If this card is special summon, you can add 1 Centur-Ion card from your deck to your hand, which will usually be your trap card. And during the end phase, you can place 1 of your non-synchro Centur-Ion monsters that is banished in your graveyard in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. So this card, once you have used Primera and either Trudea or Gargoyle to make it, then it will put your Primera back in your spell and trap zone so that you can then continue synchro summoning on your opponent's turn. That reminds me, I didn't talk about Centur-Ion Phalanx. Centur-Ion Phalanx is a normal trap card. Target 1 face-up monster on the field and banish it. And if you do, during the standby phase of the next turn, special summon that banished monster to the owner's field. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Centur-Ion Synchro monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but it loses 1,500 attack points. You can only use 1 Centur-Ion Phalanx effect per turn, only once that turn. So this is a really good interruption. It's a pretty solid card. I think that it's really good as an option to search. Another card you could play, which I have not played, is... do I not even have a copy of it? Oops. Centur-Ion True Awakening. This is a counter trap card. When a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, send one face-up monster card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. You can only activate one Centur-Ion True Awakening per turn. You can play this in Snake Eyes if you wanted to, or as Amina, or you could play this in Centur-Ion, and you can search it in Centur-Ion. The primary reason I don't play it is because it has a cost, and that cost can sometimes prevent me from making monsters. So I'd rather have a trap card that always benefits me, like banishing a face-up monster, as opposed to a card where if I don't have a good enough starting hand, I can't even use it. So yeah, that's why it's not in the deck. But you could use it if you want to. All right. Then for the Bestials, we have Bestial Magnemut, level 6 Dark Synchro Dark Dragon Monster. You target one light or dark monster in either graveyard, banish it. If you do, a special summon this card from your hand. It's quick effect if your opponent controls a monster. If this card is special summon, you can activate this effect. During the end phase of this turn, add one dragon monster from your deck to your hand, except Magnemut. You can only use each effect once per turn. So the Bestials are very good for two reasons. Number one, they give you more control, and number two, they are level 6, which means they allow you to get access level 10 monsters, which Centurions otherwise cannot access. And the Bestial monsters need the Centur-Ion cards because it gives them much needed interaction during the opponent's turn. So the two decks complement each other very well. If you want to make Centurions, I recommend you play Bestials so that you can get level 10s. And if you want to play Bestials, I recommend that you play Centurions because they give you normal summons and useful effects. Bestial Serenir. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can send one Bestial monster or one branded spell or trap from your deck to the graveyard except Bestial Serenir. We're not playing branded, so we don't really need the second effect, but being able to mill your Bestial Lubellion is really good. It gives you access to a level 8 from the graveyard. Bestial Druisworm, where you're playing this card at 3. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target one special summon monster your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. You can only use each effect once per turn. So, Druisworm is particularly good for Bestials and for Centur-Ion because, first of all, it gives you some interruption during your turn because you can tribute it for your Lubellion, get yourself a level 8, and then send one of your opponent's monsters to the graveyard. But then during your opponent's turn, you can synchro it with one of your level 4s to make Chaos Angel. Chaos Angel, banish one of your opponent's cards. Bestial Druisworm, send another one to the graveyard. Huge interactions during your opponent's turn. So this card is excellent. Play it at 3. Bestial Baldrake. If your opponent special summons a Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, and or Link monster, you contribute one other light or dark monster, then target one of those special summon monsters and banish it. All of your monsters are light or dark, so this effect is always live. It's really good. The Bestial Lubellion cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by tributing one level 6 or higher dark dragon monster. Auxilla is also a dark dragon monster. You can special summon Bestial Lubellion once per turn this way. You could send this card from your hand to the graveyard to add one Bestial monster from your deck to your hand, except Lubellion. During your main phase, you can place one branded continuous spell trap from your deck face upon your field. You can only use each effect once per turn. So the Bestial Lubellion is the primary card in Bestial decks. You search it with Magnemite, you get it on the board, and you can use its effect to get multiple continuous spells and traps from your deck onto the field, and then immediately start benefiting from their effects. So most decks will use this card to get branded Regained, which is a decent card, don't get me wrong, especially in Bestial decks. But there are other targets, and I want to talk about some of them. So we are playing Branded Regain. That is a continuous spell. If a light or dark monster is banished, you can target one of those monsters, place that monster on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, draw one card. You can only use this effect once per turn. Once per turn, if your opponent normal or special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you can target one Bestial monster in your graveyard and special summon it. You can only use this effect once per chain. Okay, so you can have multiple Branded Regains in your deck, and if you do, then you get to summon multiple Bestial monsters from your graveyard per turn. That is probably, like, if you were playing like a pure Bestial deck, you would probably play this card at 3, and you would probably activate more than one copy of it at a time. But since we are playing Centur-Ion in particular, we don't have room in our spell and trap zone for multiple copies of a card, so we're not playing more than one of it. Being able to draw cards is really good, especially during your opponent's turn. That's why Max C is good. And then also getting your Druisworm back during your opponent's turn for additional Synchro material and removal is also extremely useful. So Branded Regain, top-notch card. But in addition to Branded Regain, did you know there were other Bestial spells and traps? Like, for example, Branded Beast. Branded Beast, continuous trap card, once per turn during the main phase. If you control a Bestial monster, you can contribute one dragon monster, then target one card your opponent controls and destroy it. Amazing! Very, very useful card. Excellent card to play. And then also during the end phase, you can target one branded continuous spell or trap in your graveyard and place it face up on your field. You can only use this effect of Branded Beast once per turn. So if you are going first and you want to get Branded Regain on your board, you can actually summon Serenir, and you could tribute it for Lubellion. Then when Serenir goes to the graveyard, you can send Branded Regain from your deck to the graveyard because it's a spell card. Then use Bestial Lubellion to activate Branded Beast, and then Branded Beast during the end phase will place a Branded Continuous Spell or Trap from your graveyard into play, which will be your Branded Regain, and then you can get value out of that. So as long as you have Serenir, you can actually get 2 Lubellion sets per turn because one of them will be Branded Beast, and Branded Beast can get you more value. Again, in a dedicated branded deck, Branded Beast, easy 3 of. In a dedicated Bestial deck, Branded Beast, easy 3 of. In this deck, it's still pretty decent. And then lastly, for our Bestial Spells and Traps, we have Etude of the Branded. During either player's turn, you can immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro summon 1 Synchro monster using monsters you control as material, including a Dragon monster. You can only use this effect of Etude of the Branded once per turn. While you control a Bestial monster, banish any monsters that will be sent to your opponent's graveyard as tributes for their ritual summons, or as material for their fusion, synchro, or link summons. So it's a quick synchro effect, which is pretty decent, especially for pure Bestial because they have no quick synchro effects of their own. For Centur-Ion, it lets you quick synchro twice, which is still good. Second effect is it's a floodgate. As long as you have Bestial, any Bestial, if your opponent link summons, it gets banished. If they fusion summon, it gets banished. If they synchro summon, it gets banished. So this prevents any sort of climbing strategy. Synchro climbing, link climbing, or fusion climbing does not work because the materials have been banished. So for example, like Splash Mage, you can't Splash Mage and then revive one of your monsters and use it to climb into your Transco Talker, which you can then use to climb into Axis Talker, because all the materials that are being used and put in your graveyard are being banished instead, so there's no targets left in your graveyard for these revive effects. So Etude of the Branded is actually really, really good at stopping a lot of dangerous decks. Climbing effects are kind of like taken for granted at this point, especially in link decks. So stopping your opponent from doing any climbing at all can really mess up their strategy. And of course, who likes their cards being banished? Even if you're not going to climb, a lot of your cards are going to have grave effects, or they're going to have effects that activate when they're sent to the graveyard, and that's probably why you're linking them off to begin with. So stopping that as well is also really, really useful. This card is great, and the fact that you can play it directly from your deck is also extremely good. You will win the game thanks to this card. And then the last Bestial card is Bestial Despoter, of course. Level 10 Dark Dragon Monster requires 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner Dragon monsters. You can target one banished light or dark monster and special summon it to your field from either banished zone. When your opponent activates a monster effect, as a quick effect you can target one banished card, shuffle it into the deck, and then if you shuffled it into your deck, destroy that monster, or if you shuffled it into your opponent's deck, negate the activated effect. You can only use each effect once per turn. So if you banish one of your opponent's monsters with your Bestials, then you can negate a card, and if you banish one of your monsters, then you can pop the card that's being activated, which doesn't stop the effect, but it might, in some cases, it might as well stop the effect, depends on what the effect is. Obviously, if you have Branded Regain on the board and you shuffle your opponent's cards into their deck, then that means that you don't necessarily have any cards left to negate with. So kind of keep that in mind. If you have both Branded Regain and Bestial Despoter out at the same time, you do want to leave some cards banished so that you can get Despoter's effect off. It is better than a draw, so keep that in mind. Okay. That is it for the main deck as well as the main core of the extra deck. Now we're going to talk about kind of like the throwaway extra deck cards. We got Chaos Archfiend. This is a level 8. It requires a light tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner dark monsters, 2500 attack, 1800 defense. If any cards have been banished this turn, this card gains 2000 attack points. This card can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. Also banish any monster destroyed by battle with this card. If this card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon one Chaos monster from your extra deck except Chaos Archfiend. Okay, so Chaos Archfiend is level 8, which means that you can use it if you don't change your levels, or if something happens, you have 2 level 4s on the board, it's fine. And then also, it will special summon Chaos Angel for you if it gets removed, and 4500 attack points and attack everything is fine. So it's a good option to have in the deck. You're not going to make 8s very often, but it's nice to have like one option if, for example, your opponent negates one of your effects, or changes your monster's level or something, you know, whatever. Baron de Fleur, 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuners. Since this is level 10, we will make this with Primera and a Bestial. Once per turn, you can target 1 card on the field and destroy it. Once while face up on the field, when a card effect is activated, you can negate the activation if you do destroy that card. You can only use this effect once per turn. And then once per turn during the standby phase, you can target 1 level 9 or lower monster in your graveyard, return this card to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon that monster. So I mean, Baron is an Omni Negate. It pops a card. It's just overall a solid strategy. It's not a card that you will make every game because you usually make 12s. But if you have the option to make a 10, it's a really good 10. Chaos Angel requires 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner light dark monsters. For this card, Synchro Summon, you can treat 1 light or dark monster you control as a tuner. There we go. That is what we needed. So we only have 1 tuner monster in the deck, but we can use what's her name? We can use Trudea as a tuner monster specifically for Chaos Angel. So if our opponent manages to remove our Primera or do something else to stop us from, you know, getting a Synchro monster out, then we can special summon Trudea from our spell and trap zone during our opponent's turn, and if we have a Bestial monster out that's level 6 and the field spell active, we can Chaos Angel immediately. So really, really good that we have this option. Even if we don't have a tuner monster, it makes the deck function. And again, this is the primary reason why Bestials are so good in Centur-Ion, because it gives you an option. Like this, having level 6 monsters with Chaos Angel as an option means that Trudea can function as a tuner, which you otherwise wouldn't be able to, which opens up so many more lines for you. If this card is special summon, you can target 1 card on the field and banish it. That is not if it is Synchro Summon, so it triggers off of Chaos Archfiend special summoning it from the extra deck. It triggers off of itself special summoning from the graveyard. It's just a really good card, and it's also not once per turn. This card gains these effects based on the original attributes of materials used for Synchro Summon. So if you used a light monster, Synchro monsters you control are unaffected by monster effects activated by your opponent, which is insane. It's all Synchro monsters, so yes, make this with Primera if you can, absolutely. And then dark, your monsters cannot be destroyed by battle. So all the Bestial monsters are dark, you will always have this effect. Cool. Great card. Then we are also playing Crimson Dragon. This requires 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuners. It's level 12. If this card is special summon, you can add 1 spell or trap that mentions Crimson Dragon from your deck to your hand, which we're not playing any. As a quick effect, you can target 1 level 7 or higher Synchro monster on the field, except Crimson Dragon. Return this card to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon 1 Dragon Synchro monster from your extra deck with the same level as the targeted monster. This is treated as a Synchro summon. You can only use each effect once per turn. Okay, so Crimson Dragon can easily be made with a level 4 and a level 8, so we're going to do that. And then it gives you access to basically any level 12 or level 10 Dragon Synchro monster in the game. Without so this card basically exchanges the Synchro requirements for any monster of the same level. So we make Auxilla, that's super easy. Auxilla is a 12, that just is a 12. And then we make Crimson Dragon, and then now that we've made Crimson Dragon, we can target our Auxilla, and we can special summon any level 12 monster in the game, regardless of its Synchro materials, and that is explicitly treated as a Synchro summon. So we can use it to special summon Cosmic Blazar Dragon if we want to. Cosmic Blazar Dragon is a level 12 with 4,000 attack and 4,000 defense that normally requires 1 tuner Synchro monster plus 2 or more non-tuner Synchro monsters, and it must be Synchro Summon. This is a very difficult card to summon normally, but thanks to Crimson Dragon we can cheat it out. As a quick effect, you can banish this card until the end phase to activate one of these effects. When your opponent activates a card or effect, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. When your opponent would summon a monster, negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. Or when your opponent's monster declares an attack, negate the attack, and then end the battle phase. All of these effects are extremely powerful. In particular, the ability to negate summons is disgusting. This card is great, and we're playing it at 2. Next up, we have Red Supernova Dragon, which requires 3 tuner monsters, plus 1 or more non-tuner Synchro monsters. Again, an extremely difficult card to summon under normal circumstances, except for exactly in Resonators. But it says, must first be Synchro Summoned, gains 500 attack for each tuner in the graveyard, cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, or when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can activate this effect to banish this card and banish all cards your opponent controls. Insane. Once per turn during the end phase, after this card was banished by its own effect, special summon this banished card. So clearing your opponent's entire board and banishing all of their cards wins you the long game. So you will make Cosmic Blazar Dragon in situations where you think you can easily crush your opponent one turn just by negating one of their summons. Whereas with Red Supernova Dragon, you will make it if your opponent's already built a board, you know that they're in this for the long haul, you can't stop them, so you just continuously banish their cards. And if you get the effect off twice, your opponent is out of resources. This has happened to me. Someone did this to me. This is part of the reason why I built this deck. So Supernova Dragon is really, really difficult to out unless you can exactly win the game after it's used its effect. So you have to force its effect, which is difficult because it can't be destroyed by card effects. So you can't just like Lightning Storm this. You have to try and bounce it somehow, which there aren't too many spells and traps that do that. So you have to try and use a monster effect, and then if you use any monster effect that allows you to bounce or send it to the graveyard or something, then your opponent can just banish it. And then they banish all of your cards. And then you try and win the game, and if you can't, then it comes back and you do it all over again. So this card will put you in a bad position. In addition, if you have either Barone or Chaos Angel out, then Crimson Dragon can turn itself into Despoter. For the non-Synchro extra deck, we have Superstar Slayer, Typhon, Sky Crisis. If your opponent has just messed with you a lot during the turn or the turn after, your opponent special summoned 2 or more monsters from the extra deck. You can also exceed summon this card by using one monster you control with the highest attack. If you do, you cannot normal or special summon monsters for the rest of the turn. While this exceeds summon monsters on the field, neither player can activate the effects of monsters with 3,000 or more attack, and once per turn, you can detach one material from this card, return one monster on the field to the hand. So this is literally just, your opponent has interfered with you so much, you can't Synchro Summon at all, you have like a Trudea on the board, most of your other cards have been removed, you're just like, fine, okay. I will get rid of one of your cards, and then also your other negates that are on the board can't activate their effects. So you make Typhon, you bounce their biggest threat, it doesn't target, which is really, really good, and then you crash into something that you could beat over, usually a Link monster. And then you pass to your opponent, and you hope that this card will keep you alive with whatever cards you had left, maybe a hand trap. You will see in the 10 replays that I upload tomorrow that I don't summon Typhon Sky Crisis once. That is because if you make Typhon Sky Crisis, it is because you are losing, and it does not save you most of the time. But it makes you feel better. At least you got to do something. This card will stop you from raging, which will stop you from quitting the game. So it is a useful card to have. It will not win you the game. Almirage, one normal summon monster with 1,000 or less attack. As a quick effect, you can tribute this card at target one monster your opponent controls. One monster you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects this turn. And when your normal summon card is destroyed by battle, this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect once per turn. The Primera has 1600 attack points, so you can literally only make this with Trudea or like one of your hand traps. The primary reason to play Almirage in an extra deck is because it allows you to trigger the effect of SP Little Knight pretty easily, because SP Little Knight requires that you use a Fusion Synchro Exceeds or Link monster as material. So, essentially, if you are in a situation where you absolutely have to banish something your opponent controls, you can normal summon Effect Veiler and then link it off into Almirage, and then link Almirage with, like, I don't know, Magnamut, and then make SP Little Knight, and then banish something. That's why we play Almirage. It's not great, but our extra deck is not particularly tight, so we can spare it. You don't have to play this card if you don't want to. Artemis, the Magicious Moon Maiden. Link 1 level 4 lower spellcaster monster. Again, this is the same thing. If you can't Synchro Summon for whatever reason, which is almost impossible, but you do have your Primera on the field, you can link it into Artemis and then link into SP Little Knight, because you can't use Primera to make Almirage. Again, it's not great, but SP Little Knight is such a good card that it's important to enable it somehow. Lastly, we have Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy. It requires 2 monsters, including a Dark monster. You can target 1 Dark monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your zone this card points to, and if this card is destroyed by battle or destroyed by an opponent's card effect, then you can add 1 Dark monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. Okay, so this card is not particularly amazing because we don't have a Link 3 for you to try and climb into. But getting your opponent's dark monsters out of their graveyard can be useful to you, and you have plenty of ways to use it. I guess In particular, with us, we don't necessarily have to use it as link material because we can use it as synchro material to make Chaos Angel. So it's not the worst card in the world. I've never summoned this card with this deck, but I mean, I didn't miss the extra deck space. And lastly, SP Little Knight. If this card is link summoned, target one card on the field or in either graveyard, banish it. Your monsters cannot attack directly this turn, and when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can target 2 face-up monsters on the field, including a monster you control, and banish both until the end phase. In particular, this card is good for us because one of the biggest problems with SP Little Knight is its arrows. Its arrows point to the sides, which means if you link summon it in the extra monster zone, you can't link summon anymore. But we don't link summon, so it doesn't matter to us. So our deck can handle this just fine. All right, that is it for the deck. Let's take a look at the replay. All right, we are going first against Infernoids. We'll start things off by activating our Centur-Ion, and we pitch it from our effect failure special summon Trudea. Trudea special summon itself, play Primera special summon herself, add Wake Up Centur-Ion from the deck to the hand, activate Wake Up Centur-Ion, special summon a level 8 token, and then we can Synchro summon into our level 12, which is Auxilla. Auxilla defense extra monster zone, use its effect to draw another Primera since we already have Phalanx. We'll activate Bestial Magnumut's effect, banish the Primera from the graveyard, set the trap, then we'll use Wake Up Centur-Ion, banish it to mill our level 8 dragon. Then we Synchro Primera and the level 6 into Baronne de Fleur. And we pass. Okay. We activate the effect of our Centur-Ion Auxilla to play Primera from our graveyard to our extra deck, or to our spell and trap zone, and we draw Druid Swarm. So, our board is, we have Max C, we have Auxilla, which protects our spells and traps from being destroyed, we have Primera, which protects Auxilla from being destroyed, and then we have our field spell, which cannot be destroyed while we control a Centur-Ion card. So basically, the only cards on our field that can even be destroyed at the moment are Phalanx and Baronne. Then we have Auxilla as a level 12 dragon be targeted with our Crimson Dragon. We have Crimson Dragon in the back row, and we have Baronne, which is an Omni Negate, and Centur-Ion Phalanx, which will banish one of our opponent's cards. And we will also be able to special summon Primera, which means that we get to draw another Centur-Ion card. And we have Druid Swarm to banish a card from our opponent's graveyard. Cool, we have a lot of interaction. Basically, every card on our field and in our hand is interaction. It's the opponent's turn. They start things off by normal summoning Kagemucha Knights, and then they will special summon Infernoid Satsumas by banishing 2 Infernoid monsters from their hand. Then they use Infernoid Satsumas to tribute the Kagemucha Knights to banish one of our cards from the graveyard. We will use Bestial Druid Swarm's effect in response to banish the Kagemucha Knights, so we can't use it as any sort of material. He sets 1, we're going to immediately, we're toggled on, so we're going to immediately respond to that set. Special summon the Trudea and the Primera. Primera effect is a Chain Link 1, and the field spell is a Chain Link 2. Trudea is level 8, so we Synchro into our level 12 Crimson Dragon. And then we search a card. Grab another Trudea. Crimson Dragon, target the Auxilla, special summon the Cosmic Blazar Dragon, so we have a Negate. The opponent is going to attack into Baronne because he's given up. It's our turn. We will play another Primera from our graveyard. So we have even more Synchro summons available to us. Baronne, pop the face down card, switch to attack position, and kill him. And there you go. That is the power of Centur-Ion Bestials. They are really, really consistent, really, really strong. They can build a lot of interactive boards. You can search an Omni Negate with the counter trap if you want to. My name is Sarafi, and I was thrilled to have all of you with me.